Okay, well, hello, ACS San Francisco Bay community, and welcome to our February 2022 monthly speaker event. And as you know, it's always the fourth Tuesday of the month. And I'm Susan Hopp, a board member, and I'm here with fellow board member Gail Koza. For anyone new to the American Cetacean Society, ACS began in 1967 and is the oldest nonprofit dedicated to the protection of whales, dolphins, porpoises, and their habitat. And we do this through education, community engagement, and grants toward marine research. We really appreciate your donations in support of our mission. They do fund our grants and support our expenses around these monthly talks. And so to all of you who donate, a very big thank you. So we are recording this session and we encourage you to put your questions in the Q&A. And after the presentation, we'll do our best to get to all of them. And tonight we are going behind the scenes for a preview of the new and third edition of Marine Mammals of the World, a comprehensive guide to their identification. And this comprehensive compilation was first published in 2008 with a second edition in 2015. And now with this third edition underway, Marc Webber, one of the co-authors, will preview this significant undertaking. And Marc will share observed changes across the marine mammal species, as well as new research and technological developments that underscore the need for this updated edition. And in the Q&A, we understand Marc may be joined by his co-authors and illustrator. So we're in for a special evening. And before I turn it over to Marc, let me introduce him. And I did have to condense this because of how long and his credentials and his accomplishments. But Marc is currently a cetacean field research associate at the Marine Mammal Center, an organization he's worked with extensively with stranded marine mammals going back to 1976. And Marc spent 30 years with the US Fish and Wildlife Service in the National Wildlife Refuge and Marine Mammals Management Programs. His last assignment was as deputy manager of the 4 million acre Alaska Maritime National Wildlife Refuge, which is home to more than 60% of North America's breeding seabirds and provides habitat for numerous pinniped species, including an endangered population of stellar sea lions and threatened populations of polar bears and northern sea otters. Marc is an adjunct instructor in biology at the University of Alaska in Homer, and he continues as a member of the Alaska Marine Mammal Stranding Network. His field research includes work on small cetaceans, including harbor porpoises, bottlenose and dusky dolphins, and pinnipeds, including Hawaiian monk seals, Pacific walrus, California sea lions, and northern fur seals. Current research is on the cetaceans of San Francisco Bay Area, harbor porpoises, bottlenose dolphins, gray whales, and humpback whales. And he continues his lifelong fascination with pinnipeds through several ongoing projects. And lastly, his field work and natural history expeditions have taken him to Antarctica, the Arctic, South America, Greenland, off the California coast, Baja, and the Gulf of California. So Marc, take it away, and thank you so much for being here.
Great, thank you, Susan. I really appreciate the introduction and look forward to this talk with you all tonight. I have a kind of a bit of a dive into history to give you about this project and a little bit of the history of field guides and marine mammals and their use and the importance of them. And then at the end, I have a special kind of surprise. I have a quiz to test your identification skills for marine mammals of the North Pacific, if you want to play along at home, as the saying goes. So we'll do that as we get through into the end of the program. And let me, without any further ado, let me see if I can get this rolling. And let's see. Oops, I've got it already. Took the wrong step first. Let me go out here to, Zoom. Sorry, I'm doing all kinds of nervous little moves here. I apologize. So Zoom, and I got to share my screen. So, and I'm up, and let me get my talk up. Not sure what step I just missed here.
Do you see the share screen on the bottom?
I think I have to shrink down. It's not giving me the chance. I don't see the Zoom tool. Let's see now. Okay, now I can get there. Very good. Sorry about that, everybody. We'll share it, and then we'll put it into presentation mode now. Hopefully everybody can see that, and we're good to go. All right, sorry about that delay. So this will be the third edition of the Marine Mammals of the World that we've put together, but there are other background pieces of effort or pieces of work that went into it. I want to here in the beginning, and I'll mention my team in a second, but thank organizations that have helped sponsor me in my work, the Marine Mammal Center, as Susan mentioned, and also the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco. Both places have granted me research associates positions, and so I really benefit from their support and the ability to interact with their staffs. So our team for the current edition, the current effort, and the last one as well, is this group of authors. Your very own ACS president, Uko Gorter, is our illustrator. Very, very pleased to have him on board. He does amazing work. Bill Keener, a longtime friend of mine and the group, is an excellent writer as well as naturalist and is our technical editor. Very happy to have my own wife, Nina Lisowski, as our graphic designer, because we really get to have a chance to have some input on design as a result of that. Sometimes in the publishing business, you sort of hand over everything and what you get back isn't what you had hoped for, I would think, in terms of design, but we definitely have a lot of support there. And then I definitely want to thank and acknowledge our Elsevier manager, Anna Velukovic. They are the publisher that has been with us all along, and we're very grateful for their support. So just as a sort of getting started, I wanted to just do a little bit of background marine mammal biology using this wonderful poster that Uko prepared, just to give you an idea. The largest group of any kind of marine mammal are the cetaceans. And all of them are basically whales. There's large whales and small whales, and things we call dolphins and porpoises are really just examples of small whales. There are 91 species, I believe, on this version, and the numbers do change. And I don't know if Uko would have to chime in and tell me if we have one addition or one subtraction to contend with, but it just gives you a perspective on this great and diverse group of animals, from the largest animals that have ever lived to some of the, definitely the smallest mammals that are living, some of them that live in the sea at all. So just a way to get a perspective on what we're dealing with as authors, trying to create a guide to all of those and more, because that's only the cetacea. So just a little basic sort of setting the stage with marine mammal biology. Using the term marine mammals is kind of convenient, but it doesn't necessarily imply a lot of direct relationships between the groups. They represent numerous reinvasions of the ocean environment from terrestrial mammals. All mammals evolved on land, and then some lineages made their way back to the sea. So they're not really a natural biological or evolutionary group, other than they're all mammals. All of them do, however, by sort of a definition of that convenient definition, obtain most or all of their food from some kind of aquatic environment. Most of them live in a marine environment, but there are species that spend their entire lives in freshwater. And speaking of those animals, even the ones in freshwater are all derived from marine descendants. So in other words, no terrestrial mammal made its way into freshwater and became a marine mammal by never having a period of occupancy of the ocean in its evolutionary history. So then this all boils down to four major types, basically covering three mammal orders. The cetaceans, we just talked about them. The pinnipeds, those are the seals sea lions, and walruses. You may not be familiar possibly with the term fissipeds. That would refer to the ocean-going carnivores like polar bears, sea otters, and the marine otter of South America. And then the sirenians, again, not too familiar with us for us in California, or for you all, but I'm in Illinois at the moment. But the sirenians are the sea cows, covering the manatees and the dugongs. So let's just dive in just a bit deeper, because I think it has some relevance to us for the guide and discussions about the guide in the future, but also conservation of these animals and where things are headed today on the planet. So the cetaceans, 91 species. Now note that's the number alive, and in the parentheses, I give you the number extinct. Now those aren't fossil animals. Those are animals that went extinct in relatively recent history in these categories, let's say the last few hundred years in general. So we have 91 cetaceans, 3 of those fissiped carnivores. We have 33 extant is another term to get familiar with, living alive, not extinct species of pinnipeds, and 4 of the sirenians. So all told, it comes down to 131 extant types of marine mammals. 5 are extinct in these modern times, but when you take that 131 and you compare it to the total number of mammals on the planet, the total species diversity of mammals at 5,700, you realize that marine mammals only really amount to 2.3% of all of the types of mammals on the planet. However, a key point for me in this, in terms of ecology, conservation, thinking about them, is that they live on, those 2.3% of all mammals, marine mammals, live on 71% of the planet's surface. And maybe I should say live on and in, because some of them explore and exploit almost the greatest extents of most common deep water parts of the ocean, not the deepest trenches that we know of, but very deep areas for some species. So they live on and in our oceans and many freshwater areas as well, rivers and some major lakes. So just for fun, we call it planet Earth, but I just want to make a little pitch here from the marine mammologist perspective. That's really planet water. Most of this planet is water, most of it being salt water. So, we ought to get it right. If we run into some aliens and things, we ought to be able to describe our planet accurately to them. Our work on these guides, and a lot of the work that both Tom and Bob and I have done, has a lot to do with help, support, and cooperation and comradeship with Steve Leatherwood. He was a tremendously important mentor to me, and I know to Tom personally. And he was the one who really inspired all of this. So I just wanted to put a big shout out to Steve, who's no longer with us, and a few pictures of him doing some of his things in the field. Didn't have any of them working behind the binoculars or behind the camera immediately, but I just wanted to give a big shout out to Steve and all that he did for us and in this project over the years. Some of Steve's important contributions, a little trip down sort of the literature of marine mammals. Steve and colleagues, many important colleagues, names you'd recognize like Randy Reeves and Brent Stewart and others, Peter Fulkins as illustrator, created in some cases there, and Larry Foster, another very important name in marine mammal illustration artwork, created some of the first guides that all of us, and I know I did, coming up through the ranks in the beginning of my career, relied upon to help us get our feet under us when we went into the field, when we went out to sea and went to islands, traveled around the world. So this is just a little legacy of some of the more important publications that that many of us probably used or recall, or if you haven't, you might want to pick them up, because there's still a lot of relevance in them today, and a lot of great information. So our little journey, our chronology of our work began in 1991 when we, Tom, that is, and I and Steve Leatherwood had kind of just a very fortuitous get together for lunch at the Chicago Marine Mammal Conference on a cold winter December day, and kind of remember the moment. I mean, we sort of were talking about getting a field guide. We need a field guide for marine mammals. One of us had said, or we both supported, and what do we do about that? And Steve had ideas. He had some connections with the United Nations and the Food and Agriculture Organization, and he knew he could, or pretty sure he could get a contract to help support development of a guide. But also we said, well, what about a commercial guide? And he said, guys, basically just do it. You just got to do it. And it's like, oh, okay, we can, you know, do we need permission? That kind of thing. And we sort of had our start there. So the guide and the contract through the United Nations produced the book you see in the middle, which was the first effort of this, basically this process. Came out in 1993. And it was meant to be a guide for fisheries observers around the world, out working on boats at sea, where people bring in nets, maybe have bycatch of marine mammals, maybe they stand watches. And it was a first effort to get information about all the marine mammals with illustrations into their hands, but no photographs. We had range maps, we had some dichotomous keys to things like skulls and external body appearance, related to external body appearance, but no photographs. Now this little effort got a sort of momentum of its own, and it became something that went out under different patterns or groups of authors of us into the Spanish language, as you see on the lower left, as a CD-ROM published in Europe as well for people to use in the early days of, if you know, remember even what a CD-ROM is. But it went out as its first electronic version that way. It made it into Japanese, Chinese translated versions, and it also made it online early on for the Ocean Biodiversity Information System maintained by Rutgers University. So, and some of the elements of it are still present there, although it isn't really there as a full field guide. They've expanded how they use that, and they've kept some of the key information and added more to it over the years. So again, sort of a history of our, what we got started, the little snowball started rolling down the hill a little bit, and an interest in guides grew. And we finally jumped on the idea of doing something commercially. And Tom made a huge effort to get us some reviews by publishers, and Academic Press, which is an imprint of Elsevier, decided to take a flyer on us and signed us up to a contract. And the result of that was the first edition, which was published in 2008, you see on the lower left. And then, as you can see, two illustrators have changed a little bit along the way. Uko came on for the second edition and will be with us for the third, when it's projected to come out in 2024, to be linked to the Society for Marine Mammalogy's conference, annual or biannual conference in Perth, Australia in that case. So we released the second edition. Some of you may remember if you were there at the San Francisco Marine Mammal Conference. That was in 2015. So when I started just thinking about this talk, I did a little math in my head, and starting back in 1991 and projecting through 2024, will cover 33 years of my professional career, which by then will be about 48 years long, with all things being equal and hopeful. And so it's a big percentage of my life. And I know Tom would be able to say something very similar, and Bob too. And so it gives you the idea of what does it mean to do something that's kind of your life's work. And we are all very committed to this project and the need for quality field guides out there. And there are quality field guides out there, but we think that we've got some elements that make ours different and important, and can at least a good partner to things that are there. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get a little deeper into this presentation. Uko did a fun thing. He collected off his bookshelves samples of many of the different kinds of field guides. And wow, there's a lot of them out there. I have a bunch. Now Tom has got an enormous library. So, but a way to think about these are that some, like ours, are global in nature. Peter Fulkens's effort with Randy Reeves and Brent Stewart, and others, sorry, did a bad thing, similarly is global, but many are not. They're regional. They can even be very area specific. There are guides to Alaska here shown. There is a guide I know to Svalbard, the Svalbard Island Archipelago in the Arctic. Here's Whales of Canada. You can look around and see that there are many at all scales, and they all have value and importance because you know, various people have a lot more detailed information about their particular locality to share, and records, and the ability to talk about those. So, you know, we're pleased to see all of this out there as part of something we are a part of a family of field guides for marine mammals all over the world in various combinations. So the need for field guides, we think, is very high, and there are a number of reasons for that. They serve many users. Initially, maybe often you might think of professional marine biologists, marine mammal biologists, but these days, more and more enthusiasts, whale watchers, citizen scientists, naturalists, people who work as interpreters, these folks are growing in numbers all the time, every year. Very pleased about that. Very pleased in particular about like the faction of folks investing time into being citizen scientists to support scientific research. And so we want to acknowledge that need and share it with everybody. And again, something just popped onto my screen, so I jumped, and I'm jumping again, and again, I apologize. So another reason why we feel that guides are as relevant now as they ever were is that, and maybe more so, is that a lot of our colleagues are becoming highly specialized. That is, that they are working with incredible technology. They're covering large areas, they're modeling very large systems, and field time for some people at least is reduced, diminished to the point where they don't necessarily have a chance to see or gain extensive experience, even in some cases with species they study in the laboratory. So we feel like this can be an important aid to our colleagues and folks that don't get a chance to get out as much as they'd like, for instance, into the field, and or see the diversity of marine mammals on a large scale around the world. If you happen to get a chance to go to Perth, Australia to a conference, then maybe you'll want to pick something up to look at what marine mammals you might be able to get to see on a field trip away from the meetings, just by example. So we also are really pleased with the development of websites and blogs. Two that I think of, and there are many that I work with quite a bit, are Happy Whale. You can see their logo down on the lower left, which is a great citizen science input point for identification of individual marine mammals, particularly humpback whales. But Ted Cheeseman, who founded it, is expanding it all the time. And I'm also happy to report that we are working closely with him through the Marine Mammal Center on some of our research on humpback whales, and maybe in the future, even bottlenose dolphin fin identification. And then iNaturalist, my other organization I have close ties with, the California Academy of Sciences, along with National Geographic, sponsor iNaturalist. And a good friend of mine, Sue Pemberton at the museum there in San Francisco, is constantly on iNaturalist and always updating me with people posting really interesting sightings. Questions about identification come up regularly, and she is a whiz at figuring a lot of those animals out. And I just enjoy getting to collaborate with her and join some of those identification challenges and see what we can learn. And it's amazing how much people are seeing and getting good images of, more on that later, with the really high quality cameras that are pretty available these days. And then it's important to note, of course, that taxonomy is an ever-changing science. That is, things as techniques, technology, and samples become more available, we learn more in different things. And the taxonomy of a group, that is the number of species and their characteristics, are updated, they change. There are things like hybrids and variants are seen on a regular basis and reported as things that people don't always know what they are. Also, just basically generally knowledge grows. So our field guide, we believe, it is a kind of a growing process. We're certainly going to go into this third edition full speed, and we'll see what happens after that. But we are doing it in part because taxonomy has changed over the years since the second edition, and we want to get the latest out there in this book, this new book, for everyone. So we're going to wait to the last minute and incorporate everything we possibly can that is valid, has become valid through careful scientific review. And we'll talk about that in a second, a bit more too. And finally, I think a guide is, we think really guides are very important because things are changing. You all know about it. We all know there is, the planet is rapidly changing. We're in a phase of warming that affects the oceans dramatically. You've all probably heard about the marine heat wave. They got named the blob up in the Gulf of Alaska, affected the entire west coast of North America, Alaska to far south in North America dramatically. And those things have effects on the ocean's inhabitants. And so you can expect, we haven't fully come around, there's not a lot of published information about wholesale change, but we do see new extraliminal records. We see things shifting into from following the warmer waters, so to speak. One of our studies, which I'll get to in a second, in California, is demonstrating the range expansion of the California coastal bottlenose dolphin. But before we get to that, now you've noticed I've stumbled around with my technology here, but what I want to do is try to get you to this Society for Marine Mammalogy's webpage and show you where you can keep up with the taxonomy of marine mammals on a multi-times a year basis, because this group meets, the Society for Marine Mammalogy's taxonomy committee meets twice a year, 15 members who are fluent in all the new literature on marine mammal taxonomy, consider all the announcements of new species, the possible new species and subspecies, and pass judgment on the validity of those by either incorporating them or not in the latest versions of their list of the marine mammals of the world, where that number, 131 species, came from. Our book is entirely, the list of marine mammals, the taxonomy of our book is entirely based in the most recent version, the current version of the Society's committee's findings. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. I'm going to now share a different screen, which is the webpage. Cross your fingers for me, I need them. So this is what their homepage looks like. And so this is easy to get to, marinemammalscience.org. And what you can do, you don't have to be a member. This is a professional society, but this information that I'm going to show you is freely accessible to all without being a member. So you go to Science and Publications, you go to, there's a lot of stuff here, good stuff, but you go to list of the marine mammal species of the world, and here it pops up, that banner I showed you, but you can roll down through then all the information about the most recent decisions, the literature it was based on, things that have come up since the last edition of the list, etc. And then you start to get into the heart of things, which is the list of the marine mammals and subspecies of the world. And it goes by mammal order, down to family, down to species. And you can see then it's really useful, gives you the common and scientific names. It gives you the recognized subspecies with their common names, all of that really helpful, especially if you're a lister. A lot of us like to list the wildlife we see, from birds to butterflies to marine mammals to other things like plants and you name it. So if you're a lister, this is a great one for your marine mammal list, to base your marine mammal list in. And our book will support it, but it will change from edition to edition because there are multiple updates between the years it takes us to get a new edition out. So one last little tidbit here is that there's also our editions of previous lists you may be interested in. So you may go back and see what was current in a given year if you're interested, or compare from year to year and see how things are progressing. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. So far, so good. And I'm going to try and get my PowerPoint back up. And we'll share that, and we'll go back to projecting mode and breathe a big sigh of relief because it worked for now. So moving along then, I want to have a couple of slides to talk about some of those bullets in particular. Hybrids and variants. Hybrids are something of great interest to me, and our co-author and colleague Tom Jefferson was in the middle of a really interesting case of finding a hybrid in the Gulf of California, a bluefin whale hybrid that has got the name flu. And Tom and many others published on flu and tracked or looked at observations of flu. Flu's been seen and tracked by having devices placed on his back from 2004 to 2020. I said his, I'm not sure Tom can help us at the end. I don't know if flu's a male, you can see flu is a unique looking animal. There are many features that distinguish this individual, but look at this crazy dorsal fin that it has. It's really quite different from any blue whale dorsal fin. I think this is what Tom and other friends who found this animal in the Gulf of California for one of the more recent sightings, if not the most recent sighting, saw right away that is something really different, something really weird. And flu also doesn't have normal coloration for either a blue or a fin whale. You can see some chevrons, these light blazes here are more characteristic of fin whale. You can see that the rostrum isn't quite as broad and U-shaped as a as a blue whale. It's a little more intermediate between a fin and a blue. And that there's dark baleen showing on the right-hand side, right through there. If this was a fin whale, if you know fin whales, they're asymmetrically colored. There'd be white baleen showing through on the right side. So there are also differences in the fluke. So this is a great case. They definitely present fun challenges in the field. Sometimes you have to bring the pictures home and find people to help you out. We also are disadvantaged in the work on hybrids as people who are not specifically handling and biopsying animals, because we don't always know for sure what this animal is. We just know it's different. And sometimes we get lucky, like Tom did here, by reconciling this individual with a known whale from studies in Oregon and other locations, and sometimes we don't. I got lucky in my most recent experience with a hybrid. I saw one of these individuals here in of these two pictures, the right version, which is a Guadalupe fur seal, California sea lion, that's what those acronyms mean, hybrid that was carrying a tag, and actually was difficult in the field to figure out what I was seeing. Caught me a little bit by surprise, but this animal had previously stranded or beached itself in California, was recovered by the Marine Mammal Center in Sausalito and rehabilitated and released. And I found it a bit later thriving down at a Guadalupe fur seal colony. You can see on the left is a typical juvenile Guadalupe fur seal, and on the right, some of the color variation is not exactly what we have to pay attention to, because this fur seal happens to be mostly wet, and that makes them darker and tinted a little differently. But on the right, you can notice that this California sea lion Guadalupe fur seal hybrid is got a very different muzzle. It's blunted and looks a lot more like a sea lion than it does traditionally like a fur seal. Even the little ears are not quite as long as they are, and fur seals are known for their very long ear pinnae. Flippers are a little different. Pelage is sort of a grayish. It was in fact grayish. These guys aren't quite that lighter of a gray, so there's sort of intermediate color going on. This was done at San Benitos Island, something a bunch of us saw during an eco-tour trip visit down to San Benitos Island in Baja California. Other pictures here, this one's something that I was able to get from the California Academy of Sciences, showing you a hybrid of a northern fur seal, NOFS, and California sea lion. And by the way, where the genetics have been done that I'm aware of, these fur seal hybrids of these two different kinds of northern hemisphere fur seals with California sea lions are invariably female fur seals mating with male sea lions, producing these hybrids in this particular case. There are other examples from other parts of the world where different kinds of fur seals hybridize with one another, and we have a lot of information on that in our book, particularly in the Southern Hemisphere. And here's a youngster version of the same cross of a northern fur seal and a California sea lion. That one was under care at the Marine Mammal Center a number of years ago, and it's something we got to publish in our second edition. And finally, just another cetacean to bring up. This picture on the left is of a Dall's porpoise, harbor porpoise hybrid, along with a picture on the right of a sort of a normal pigmented Dall's porpoise. These hybrids are particularly seen in the Salish Sea, Puget Sound kind of area. They definitely, my understanding of them is they spend most of their time traveling with Dall's porpoise. Their paternity, if you will, is harbor porpoise father, Dall's porpoise mother, but the ones that have been seen in nature anyway have been seen traveling exclusively with Dall's porpoise, to my understanding. So another really interesting animal, very gray looking. There's a variance of this with blazes of transitions of gray to kind of a copper color or a beige color across the flanks. And so there's numerous ways this hybrid pattern is expressed in this particular cross. So hybrids, a lot of fun, a lot of interest out there, and just something you might come into one day and you go, well, that's not in the field guide. It could be a hybrid. So, take a picture, take a lot of pictures. There's both color variation and hybrids to contend with in a lot of these species. And it's awfully hard to get them sometimes sorted out in the field when you run into one of these different sort of individuals. Some of the work I'm involved with the Marine Mammal Center and colleagues in California, recently lost a very dearly departed friend, Izzy Shaponiak, Bill Keener, Tim Markowitz are involved. Bottlenose dolphins. Bottlenose dolphins have been making their way north in California for quite a long time. When Steve wrote his first guides, they basically did not get beyond about here, where Point Conception is in California. They made their way to Monterey Bay. These are not the dates they got there. This is a map of an individual's movements, but they were in there in the 1980s. We started doing work on them in 2010. They'd already been seen a few different times in the San Francisco Bay Area. From our study area is from Sonoma County, northern Sonoma County, down to southern San Mateo County in central Northern California. And then this individual, known as by the name Miss, given to her in Monterey Bay during study work on her there, has made her way, along with several others, all the way up to Puget Sound, basically almost unheard of in terms of our understanding of bottlenose dolphins, not but 40, 50 years ago. So these animals are definitely ranging north. We can't entirely correlate it with warm water change. However, there has been some effort to do that by some marine biologists who've published on a whole host of other members of the marine community here in this part of California near Bodega Bay and San Francisco Bay Area, the numbers of species changing with warmer water fauna moving north, particularly in cases of marine invertebrates and fishes. So we believe, we have a feeling that some cetaceans are already doing this. There are other issues too with, by the way, with warming and changes in the ocean that will affect marine mammals beyond potential changes in distribution. Sea ice loss, which is a vital surface for breeding in a lot of different kinds of marine mammals, but also diseases. Diseases of warmer water areas are making their way into cooler water, what would be traditional cooler water areas. And other marine mammals on the move are possibly transporting diseases between populations that had little or no contact in the past. So there are numerous other things to consider with climate warming and ocean warming, other than just we're not seeing those things here anymore, we're seeing something new. There are many other considerations. Lastly, I just wanted to mention some other work of mine is I just stumbled into some records of Guadalupe fur seals from Alaska. Going back to the 1940s, Guadalupe fur seals were basically considered extinct. They were hunted to near extinction for their pelts by whalers turning to them after numbers and supplies of large whales diminished. They profited from selling the pelts of fur seals and the blubber of elephant seals. But Guadalupe fur seals have made a stunning recovery. They've now become pretty regular in California, Oregon, and Washington, as represented by sightings and the marine mammal stranding work that's done by organizations along that coast. And we've got some records now, 3 of them in Alaska, from the Pribilof Islands. This is Unalaska, which is where Dutch Harbor is, and one in Kachemak Bay near Homer, Alaska, in south central Alaska. So 2 examples of things I'm involved with that are showing some interesting occurrences and movements and extraliminal records and things like that. So let's get back to the field guide. Some things that make a good field guide are, well, I think images are important that help you identify things clearly. Great illustrations. This is an example of Uko's efforts to show us all the different color that is carried by the white-beaked dolphin of the North Atlantic. It's a nice treatment of this interesting species, which actually goes through a very complex progression from neonate to adult, which we hope to do a better job of representing in our next edition. Tom is a big champion, and I think he's right on, of incorporating dichotomous keys. These are keys where you go, if you show something, you give a piece of information, or you show an image. If not this, then that. If not A, then B. If not B, then C. Or if not B, then jump down to E or F or line or page whatever. And these keys then we have incorporated to support our guide efforts with external appearance and skull. So we have an illustrated representation of every skull, multiple views of every skull of every marine mammal in the world. So we will retain those in our 3rd edition. This is a lovely compilation that Uko did. He did a great one on the various ecotypes of orca, which we'll have, and we'll have probably some updating too. But here we have showing you all the different types of humpback dolphins in the world. And it's nice, another nice value of a field guide is to show you not only what's in your area, or what might be possibly more than one species in your area and how to compare them, but just in general, what does this very interesting group of dolphins look like from one species to the next? So we have a number of plates like this scattered throughout the book at chapter headings, and as it's important within species accounts. So our guide is organized around a number of subcategories within each chapter. Each species account is considered a chapter for us. And I'll just go through them really quickly. They're pretty self-explanatory. Recently used synonyms might be one that isn't, where these could be scientific names that are were not used in the not too distant past, but are no longer considered valid or best name for the species. Common names are important, and we're always in making arguments that the importance of common names is sometimes underestimated, especially when people publish using sometimes local common names or sort of self-invented common names. It's happened in the literature before. And these can only really add confusion for, I think, a lot of us who study marine mammals, let alone people who are not involved with the science every day. Taxonomic information, you know a lot about that now. We talk about the characteristics of the species, and we're going to try and improve how we present that information in the 3rd edition. Recognizable geographic forms. What do we mean there? Well, here, example in this picture is a killer whale, an ecotype called resident in the North Pacific. And so this would be an example of a recognizable geographic form. Not all ecotypes of things or subspecies of things can be told apart from external examination. Some are known as different from their genetics only. But the more information we get from the field, the more we can possibly parse these things out on a finer scale. We like to talk about what a species can be confused with. We talk about its distribution, and there's range maps particularly that cover that. Ecology and behavior, we talk about its significant ecology and behavior elements that may especially help identify the species, like what habitats it prefers, what are some common behaviors you might see as an observer. Feeding and prey, again, helping you possibly reconcile why you're seeing what you're seeing, where you're seeing it, and why you're seeing it. And then threats and status. This is to talk about conservation issues like, is there bycatch? Is there take? Is there commercial harvest? Things like that. So what are the pressures that these species are under, or a species is under? And finally, IUCN status means the International Union for Conservation of Nature, which is an independent NGO, third-party and non-governmental organization based in Europe, which maintains professional committees of specialists who, for all animals and plants on the planet. And there are committee groups for pinnipeds, all the marine mammals. And so those people do regular reviews and determine in their way, do they believe that that particular animal is endangered or threatened or near threatened, and using their terminology. So I'd encourage you, if you're interested, because in the United States, we hear a lot about our Endangered Species Act, which is important and an important conservation tool used by our agencies. However, the rest of the world relies heavily on this. So if you just kind of Google and go out, I won't go take you there tonight, but if you go out to IUCN status, you'll get a chance to get an appreciation for how a non-governmental organization looks at and has a classification scheme for the health and welfare of a variety of species. Also, lots of great information about those species at that website beyond just a status, where they're at that given time. Okay, we have done something a little different in our guide than I think most people do, which is to include those recently extinct species I have mentioned. We, in fact, will incorporate the sea mink, which wasn't in edition 2, which went extinct probably in the late 1700s. It was an animal of the eastern seaboard of North America. But we do this because to me, in all of us, it's a very important conservation statement. These are animals whose extinction we could have prevented. That is, people, up until for several of these animals, even to relatively recent decades, had a chance to preserve these animals, keep them from going extinct. The Steller sea cow probably went extinct several years ago at a different time of exploration by Europeans. But these others, the Japanese sea lion, the Caribbean monk seal, the baiji, these are all extinctions that you arguably could have been had we acted sooner. And we hope that we never add another species to this list. And I say that, I don't even want to almost only don't want to say it, but the highly endangered vaquita porpoise of the Gulf of California is on the brink. And we're all very concerned about it surviving into the future. And if we have to add it here, it'll be just yet another tragedy of impact by humans on the diversity of a wonderful group of marine mammals. So we've kept these, and it's also fun because, as I'll tell you in a second here, the Japanese sea lion, funny thing, you should ask about the Japanese sea lion. Uko Gorter and I have been having fun thinking about Japanese sea lions for some time now. We haven't really done a lot of reaching out beyond our local resources, that is the web and a few friends, but one colleague of Tom's, Yamasa, in Japan. But we're interested in this species of sea lion that we've lost probably in the 1950s. It was present in the Sea of Japan along the Japanese and Korean coasts for thousands of years. It is basically just like a California sea lion. We don't know enough about it to know quite how different it was externally. It was sometimes called the black sea lion. It was very dark and black, as male California sea lions can be as adults, but these animals seem to have more universal dark color coloration as adults. You can even see them in this old picture from the Liancourt rocks in the Sea of Japan, a contested area by Japan and Korea, South Korea. You can see the light muzzle, you can see the sagittal crest, which characterize California sea lions. And so some people here harvesting California sea lions, or Japanese sea lions, excuse me, in Japan. Mistake to make. They were considered all one species for a long time, but genetic data has separated Japanese, Galapagos, and California sea lions into 3 species. I can't give you a year of photographer, and I'm embarrassed to say, but Uko came up with dig deeper back into our records. I just didn't want to showing it to you. It is a California sea lion type animal. Sorry about that. My internet is taking a waiver moment. And it was a photograph taken from the Russian Far East. So either a California sea lion made a really incredible trip, or a California sea lion escaped from captivity, possibly somewhere in Asia. That's also another potentially likely scenario. And lastly, of course, if you want to get into really fun theories, it's a surviving Japanese sea lion. But don't say I said that. I don't mean it. That's just having fun. Most likely it's well explained by a far wandering California sea lion or an escapee. However, knowing that these things happen, having the chance to see these images, and we do get a chance to see things like this from so many friends and colleagues around the world, you just kind of want to get that information into the right hands, and maybe somebody who actually can and does do research with genetics can biopsy it if it shows up again and settle what in fact we just have seen, what we just documented. So anyway, historical fun and games about Japanese sea lions, not fun in the sense that they're extinct, but fun research-wise for us. And Uko and I will continue to dig deeper and see what else we can find as time goes on. And I can see I'm tired of taking a lot of time, so I'll try and speed up here a little bit. I just wanted to dive in a little bit on some of the new species and transformations that'll be in the 3rd edition. A brand new Balenopterid whale, Rice's whale, named after Dale Rice, a prominent marine mammal scientist, not Rice University, not Rice the grain. Rice's whale after Dale Rice has been described by Dr. Patty Rozelle, published on this. And here are a few pictures of it from the National Marine Fisheries Service, a range map from her paper, and a very early picture listed as a Bruda's whale, which was undoubtedly a Rice's whale, a picture of one that came ashore in Florida, right near the range point of what we now know as the Rice's whale, an animal with a very limited range that we know of so far, although there are some records outside the Gulf of Mexico. Most sightings to date what little we know of it have come from that area. Dr. Rozelle did a wonderful job combining genetics, distribution, morphology. She examined at the Smithsonian, with incredible repository of marine mammal bones and skulls, and discovered differences, morphological differences. So she really had the full package of science behind her determination that Rice's whale was new for us. It looks a lot like a Bruda's whale, but it's not a Bruda's whale. Here are 2 beaked whales that will be new for the 3rd edition. Sato's beaked whale is a new type of, what you would think of as a Baird's beaked whale, but it's a smaller, darker version that's been known in the Western Pacific for some time now, just not, but only recently published. We have these whales showing up in Alaskan waters, not that people have seen them per se, but I think through recordings and through stranded animal recoveries that genetics have revealed. But this is a type of Baird's beaked whale, going to be called Sato's beaked whale, Berardius minimus will be its new scientific name. And it's a North Pacific species. The Ramari's beaked whale is a Southern Ocean species, has a great scientific name, Mesoplodon uu. I'd like to get into a little more understanding of where that came from. But this is a variation of enough of a variation of a northern hemisphere species that it was also determined to be distinct and will be accepted as a new type of whale on our planet. Those of you who follow the marine mammal literature and even the press know that of all the things that the new species that have come along, at least in my career, a lot of beaked whales, a lot of new beaked whales have been described. And Bob, our co-author Bob Pitman, is right in the middle of all of that. Big beaked whale enthusiast, and has published extensively on their distribution, identification, the types and species and so forth. So really fortunate to have Bob on board. And I should also say Tom, for that matter, for all his work on dolphins and many other species as well, and his work on the taxonomy committee. I think I neglected to mention that Tom is actually a member of the committee. So we get nice updates from Tom on what's going on over there, and a deeper understanding of the thinking than the easy understanding of the thinking that we would get from just our own scanning of the literature. So one big change that you in California, those of you in California, and I know I'm very excited about the possibility of, and Tom is working on this as we speak, is the resplitting, that is the taking of the common dolphin species as it's known today at the Society for Marine Mammalogy, and going back to a time not long ago when the long-beaked form of the common dolphin and the short-beaked form of the common dolphin were recognized as different species. Tom and colleagues are doing extensive museum field work, photographic analysis, genetics, examinations, and so forth in order to possibly reinstate these as two separate species in the Eastern North Pacific Ocean. He's not proposing to reinstate them throughout the world, but just in our North Pacific, Eastern North Pacific in particular, and central, for that matter, Central North Pacific, where most of us that are at this meeting will do most of our time at sea and whale watching. You can see both of these animals quite commonly off California. At present, they are subspecies, but in the future, they may yet become reinstated as valid separate species. Another important split that's going on where single species is being split back to two. In this case, back again is the operative word. What were called the South Asian river dolphin, which was the dolphin living in the Ganges River system and the dolphin living in the Indus River system, were lumped as one species together. But new work, again, has revealed that they are distinct from one another and will be separated in the next list of marine mammals of the where they are separated for the taxonomy committee, and we will separate them in the guide. And there's interesting conservation implications to this split, because having a country like Pakistan have a dolphin unique to its waters will definitely motivate, or at least help motivate, conservation efforts, public awareness and interest and pride in trying to preserve a species that lives just in your area alone. So having it lumped in with the larger country of India's large Ganges River system may have actually caused some conservation losses for the Indus River variety species now. There's no good reason to split animals out if there isn't good science to support it, but once the science is there, you can say there's possibly or potentially a really nice conservation outcome and coming back in the future for that dolphin. We can only hope. There's a lot of trouble for river dolphins around the world because of human impacts to river systems with dams and barrages and traffic and toxic dumping, et cetera. One of the dolphins lost, the only cetacean species, sorry about the stumble, lost in modern times was the river dolphin that lived in the Yellow River of China. So the Baiji, as it was known, it was shown on the endangered species slide earlier. So we feel like all river dolphins, all types of dolphins living in river systems are of great concern for conservation and needed as much protection as they can get. So additional updates and changes. Uko is hard at work revising illustrations. You see below a beautiful representation of a poorly known baleen whale that's not all that old either in terms of our knowledge of it, Omura's whale. We are also going to replace most of the photographs, more on that later, because hopefully you'll play a role in some of that. We're going to add drone images where we can get them to give that perspective, because so many people and so many drones are out there, both in scientific research and amongst the public. We will update, of course, all our range maps, and in particular, try and gather up all records and extraliminal records we can find that have come out since our second edition. We're going to create a new focus section for the hybrid otariids. Those are the fur seals and sea lions of the North Pacific. We have a hybrid section, but it only covered Southern Hemisphere otariid hybrids, again, fur seals. And in the case of the North Pacific, we mean by using that, the fur seal and sea lion species. We are going to add some design changes to help find new data within the text, hopefully making it easier and more functional in the hand, and or on your phone, or on your laptop, or on your pad, because you can get an electronic version of even of the second edition as it is now. So you can get that, and you will be able to get that for the third edition as well from Elsevier. And then finally, we have realized that the binding of our second edition has just not stood up to a hard life in the field. And so we will upgrade the binding, we will upgrade the cover material, and hopefully create a more durable hardcover book, or hard copy, excuse me. It won't be a hard cover necessarily, but hard copy book for use in the field if you don't want to just use electronic resources. So those are some of the things we're working on and will be part of the third edition. What you can do is help us. We're calling for images. This is our Go Loud session. We've talked to colleagues here and there, and I know Bob and Tom particularly have been busy accumulating new images over the years, but we are officially open for business. And we will be announcing our need for images on things like Marmam, a blog about marine mammal news and publications. We'll be asking colleagues. We want to go out and talk to people all over the world, though. We're interested in talking to students. We're interested in talking to whale watchers, citizen scientists, anybody who just likes to take pictures of marine mammals, avid photographers. And we need, and we're very happy to get a chance to review images for use in the guide. So we're looking for free-ranging animals, rare things ashore stranded. Some animals are still only best known from animals ashore stranded versus live sightings, pictures from live sightings. We are looking for variations in color, possibly other things like hybrids, and under variations of color, you can think of things like albino individuals or leucistic individuals. For example, leucistic animals are animals that have basically white replacing much or all of their dark pigmentation. They're not truly albino, but simply have a white color replacement, pigment replacement. So anything that looks a little weird or different, that'd be kind of fun to see. And we may get a chance to use it, especially if it helps us with ID issues. We're very interested in documenting common behaviors, interactions with members of their own kind and other species, comfortable resting postures, like this old sea lion over here, California sea lion from Mexico, images that document foraging and even predation. Those will all be welcome. Mixed species images. You'd be surprised at how few of those we've been able to come into, where we might have a school of dolphins representing multiple species, or a couple of different species of seals laying together on the same beach or ice floe. Those are all of great interest because they certainly provide fun comparative benefit. And finally, pinnipeds are a special case, and I get to say that because I'm the pinniped chapter guy, because they're amphibious, and I need pictures of them on land and at sea, but we need them in both environments because they just are, it's a different challenge to identifying them in both different kinds of locations. So we'll talk, I don't know if I should dwell on this right now, but we will, if you are willing to submit images, you will, if we publish one of your images, you will receive an e-copy. Sorry, only one e-copy, no matter how many images we publish, but you will get an e-copy if we publish one of your images. So a little incentive there, plus you'll get a discount code to buy a printed version from Elsevier, along with, if you at least have one image selected, one code, and only one code, no matter how many images selected also. There will be a need to sign a release form that allows us to publish your pictures and use them in promotional activities. So you'd have to be willing to give up rights, at least for this project and future projects versions of it, let's say, if there happens to be a fourth edition. I'm gonna be the main intake person for images, and that's my email. That'll start to get published at a few blogs and websites. You can certainly reach back out to me through ACS, Susan and Gail, and we can get you my email if you're not writing it down or screen capturing it right now. So what we want initially, we haven't got all of our specifications down, but we want low resolution versions of pictures because it's just too hard to move around high resolution images of a lot of things. So if you send us a lot of things, which we welcome, please send low res versions and we will get back to you if we like some or need to see high res versions. And that'll be a much smaller sample when we get there. And that'll be mostly me, but that's the process. For images selected, we will need to know how to credit the image, who took the picture, and if they have an affiliation to an organization. We need to know where and when. And if you are a marine mammal scientist or it was taken under a permit, we will need your permit information to publish with the image. That's a legal requirement for many marine mammal permits around the world, particularly here in the United States. And finally, your help is needed. This is a project we've learned over the years that requires the global community. Like I said, everybody, not just the PhDs and everybody, students, undergrads, grads, you name it. Everybody is welcome, everybody is needed, and we need people living all over the world to help us, because those are sometimes the people that have these interesting species right under their noses, where most of us are lucky to see them once in our lifetimes. So thank you in advance. Okay, ready to take a quiz? I know I've been going on and on. I've got a short quiz for you, 12 questions overall. So what I want you to do is, it's kind of an honor system quiz. I didn't do this through some high-tech platform. I'm going to show you a picture. You see the answers, the potential answers in multiple choice format, and you'll get a few 10 seconds or 15 seconds to look here, and then I'll give you the answer. But what I'd like you to do, because this is interesting, so to give you a little background, just a quick background before I get further, is to say, we've been talking about even doing this for our professional colleagues at a conference with really difficult pictures to identify, to drive home the point that it is a special art unto itself and science unto itself to be able to do field identification. And it's really, as I said earlier, critical for both research, management, conservation, to be able to know who the heck you're looking at. And so these skills are maybe old school skills, but couldn't be more needed and relevant than today, in times when so much is going on and there is so much impact to the ocean environment and islands along our coastlines and shorelines. So anyway, backstory on that is, this is the first time we've run a little quiz out. And I had one person look at it, he's pretty good, and Bill, my friend Bill, and he said, "You've made this pretty hard. So don't let me put you off, please participate. I'm not just trying to say, oh, if you didn't do well, you need our guide." You can certainly pick one up. That it wasn't my intent. But if you do have a guide or guides available to you, they would help you and through most of these questions. And I'll tell you what some of the key features are after I give you the answer. So we've been dwelling long enough. So here's the answer to the first quiz question. So my point is this: would you do us a favor and put into the chat when you're done, if you're taking the quiz, how many you got right out of 12, 8 of 12, 10 of 12, 12 of 12, 2 of 12, whatever your success was. And there you go. So Susan and Gail are going to give us we'll get an idea of the percentage, the distribution of scores for our quiz. Thanks, Susan. Can you pull that back? So I don't know if it's covering everything for everyone. Should I? I will close it on my screen. Okay, thanks for doing that. So here we go. This is a bottlenose dolphin. This lovely airborne animal from Mexico shows you the characteristics of the bottlenose dolphin, depending on lighting, basically gray coloration, pattern of gray coloration, sometimes darker above and lighter below, but not always, depending on lighting. Falcate, strong and back curved dorsal fin, and a thick and blunt beak, separated from the melon by a clean kind of angular breakaway. So this is, and it's a fairly large dolphin. You can't appreciate that in the picture, but this is a bottlenose dolphin. Hope you did well with that first question. Second question, who is this animal? Give you a few more seconds. I think that's about 10 seconds. This is a California sea lion. It's an adult female coming ashore in La Jolla, California. Why do we know that? Well, we know it's a California sea lion by its color, the shape of its muzzle, and the sides of its head. The only other sea lion in the Eastern North Pacific is the much larger and more robust Steller sea lion. Also, we know it's a female in this case, although I didn't ask you that, because of the more gracile proportions, the thin neck, thinner and smaller shoulders. If this was a male, even of comparable size, you'd see it, whoops, excuse me, let me go back. That's a preview of the next question. You would see more of a continuous ear to shoulder thickness of the neck and upper body of the male of any comparable size of other than a pup of California sea lion. So this is a female, a California sea lion, and it's an adult female. Okay, next question. This is one of the harder ones. I devilishly apologize, I guess, with a wry grin. Good luck. This is more for the folks who've done a lot of looking at. By the way, all of these animals are from the Eastern North Pacific. This isn't a quiz that incorporates pictures from, you know, the South Indian Ocean or someplace that, you know, you all, if you're whale watchers and such, you have had a chance, I think, to see almost everything I will show you in these pictures, and probably everything in these pictures in the Eastern North Pacific, right off the coast of California. Even if some pictures are taken from Baja California, this species, for one, is an unusual California species, maybe even rare, but it does occur. It does show up. Everybody ready? Oops. Oh gosh, I bumped my mouse. Hopefully that doesn't work too hard against me. So this animal is the rough-toothed dolphin. And you know that, well, there's an interesting behavior going on here. Rough-toothed dolphins like to surface and swim in synchrony frequently, and kind of like a rank or a chorus line kind of effect. But look very carefully right here on the head of the animal. There is basically no demarcation from rostrum or beak to forehead. It's like a ski jump kind of effect, a ramp down from the melon, the forehead of the animal, of the dolphin, and the gray coloration. There's also an indication of a saddle color where there's a cape, if not a saddle, but a cape, excuse me, of darker color laid over the back of the animal, not a saddle, but a cape. So this is a rough-toothed, or 3 rough-toothed dolphins. Okay, an easy one. Everybody should get this one right. I won't even give you a lot of time on it. Come on, you got to get this one. It's part of a humpback whale. It's a very large pectoral flipper raised in the air during a pec slap behavior of a humpback whale. And you can see even that brilliant light coloration on the underside of this particular individual's flipper. Okay, some more of our pinniped friends. How about these guys? This is from Mexico. I'll give you that. In the Eastern North Pacific. Everybody working it out? Okay, we have northern elephant seals. We have 2 adult females in the background, and a pup of the year, a very fat pup of the year from San Benito's Island in Mexico. This was taken in early February, which is when these elephant seal pups are starting to be weaned by their moms. And you can, of course, see these animals all over California's shorelines, from Piedras Blancas to Año Nuevo to Point Reyes, and they're also out on the Farallon Islands and Año Nuevo Island and Año Nuevo Point. So this is a relatively easily seen pinniped in California. Okay, 2 pictures from the same sighting at time of the same species. What are they? Everybody ready? Written down your answer. Okay, these are sperm whales, the big ones. These are sperm whales seen in the Gulf of California, Mexico. Sperm whales have not a traditional dorsal fin, more of a very large dorsal hump on their backs that varies in size between the 2 sexes and with age. The blowhole of sperm whales is unique in that it is on the left side of the end, the very end of the, or near the very end of the rostrum. And the spout, although this isn't a perfect example of it, is projected both forward and to the left. One other subtlety of sperm whales, it's hard to see in these images, is you can see some evidence of lines or shadows here. They have kind of a wrinkly, their flanks are rather wrinkly. They're kind of folds of skin, ridges of skin, make them look like a big pickle. So long, flat back at the surface. Here's the blowhole of one that hasn't got a spout in front of it. Dorsal humps and a blow projected left and forward from the very end of the rostrum are key features in identifying sperm whales. Okay, another easy one. I want to get you guys something to work with here. Most California whale watchers should know this animal pretty well. Multiple features and evidence to distinguish it. Okay, this is a gray whale. And we know this because coloration, mottled patterning across the body, presence of barnacles. Other whales have barnacles, but these are all taken together. A slight overhang of the upper jaw over the lower jaw, a pair of throat grooves. This is the ventral or underside of the whale. So these are all diagnostic in our area of gray whale. And they're a very unique whale, frankly. In the world. There are no others. There were gray whales in the Atlantic at one time. They do wander though. And if you do follow these things, there are records in not too many, in recent years and not too far back, of gray whales showing up in the Mediterranean and off of West Africa. So there are some gray whales making some really big trips. There was a population that is now extinct that lived in the Atlantic Ocean up until about the late 1600s, I believe. We can correct that in the questions later if I got that one wrong. All right, so question 8, another pinniped question. You can tell I'm the pinniped guy, but not to give it all away, but I guess I just gave you a huge clue. There's your answer. So without further ado, sort of blew that one. It's trying to be tricky because northern right whale dolphins can look a lot like these guys once they start porpoising, but these are northern fur seals doing their best imitation of porpoising or northern right whale dolphin appearance by leaping as they travel rapidly. And marine mammals, pinnipeds, small marine mammals, pinnipeds, dolphins, porpoises, often when they reach certain critical speeds, it's actually more efficient for them to leave the water in a porpoising kind of maneuver than stay in the water and propel themselves through that thicker, more viscous medium of the water versus gliding or through the less dense medium of air and less viscous medium of air. So gave you that one. That was supposed to be one of the hard ones. Maybe I'm just feeling kind. Okay, how about this guy? Tried to be a little clever, devious with these answers. By the way, yeah, several of these species can and are seen in California, even as vagrants. So there's a bit of a hint if you needed a bit of hint or help. This is a harbor seal, a dark phase. Harbor seals come in light, intermediate, and dark color phases. They're basically unified by the fact that they all have some patterning of rings and spots to one degree of density or another. This is a dark phase harbor seal in Monterey Bay on the rocks just off one of the pathways to the left of the pier in Monterey. I was waiting for a whale watch trip to get underway and had a chance to get a picture of a nice looking harbor seal on a rock with the tide coming in. Okay, how about this animal? What do we got here? Okay, hopefully that was sufficient time for you. This is a killer whale. The animal is lob-tailing. Its head is down. There's its dorsal fin, not the flukes of another individual, and it's raised its tail flukes up. Notice the interesting curl. This is an adult male or near adult male, and killer whales, orcas, can have a curl to their tail fluke ends. As they mature, get older, they can actually have this down curve curl and this beautiful light color pattern underneath as well. So this is a killer whale, lobtailing in Alaska. And how about these guys? Mother and calf, I'll give you that, of what they are. We're almost done, by the way, so thanks for hanging in there. Harbor porpoises, right from the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, doing research with my partners, Bill and Izzy, from the bridge, this mother and calf swam by. So harbor porpoises are basically gray in color. They don't really have a beak. Their kind of head comes to an end of a point. This is characteristic of porpoises. Not all dolphins have beaks, but the classic look of a dolphin is to have some kind of a beak or rostrum projecting with the discreteness away from the forehead or melon. Harbor porpoise faces just taper to a point without a real easily appreciated beak. And they have a triangular dorsal fin. Remember from the bottlenose dolphin, I showed you an animal with a hooked fin, which we called falcate. This is a triangular type of dorsal fin. Okay, last question. And there's a little bonus attributed to this one. What is it? And if you can enter it into the chat, and maybe Susan or Gail can give me the first right answer, what are those things hanging on to its lower body? Okay, time's almost up for our quiz and this question and our whole quiz. All right, this is a long-beaked common dolphin. You can tell by the patterning of, there's the pattern on the sides, the tan thoracic field on the side. You can see dark coloration coming from flipper, basically anal stripe to flipper, flipper to eye, very dusky and hooded in this area, or camouflaged as the older, particularly in older animals, can get quite blackish, charcoal in there, and kind of a medium-sized and falcate dorsal fin. And how about Susan or Gail, did we have anybody trying to tell us what those were?
Yeah. We had lamprey, and then two of us said remoras.
Remoras is the right answer. Thank you. Yeah, those are remoras. Not digging into the animal, but using that suction disc on the tops of their heads to hold on to and hitch a ride. And many marine mammals and sea turtles carry remoras full-time or part-time. They numbers change all the time, it seems, and that you can see them moving around on their bodies, even if you look carefully on bow riding dolphins. Okay, everybody. Is
that a symbiotic relationship, Mark?
I would say not really. I think that the remora is, regardless of how streamlined it is causing the dolphin to experience some extra drag, and it will cost it more energy to move through the water. So no, I don't think this is necessarily a great thing for them, or even a good thing, or a neutral thing for them. It's a slight negative, but they do have them. And it's not like dolphin A asks dolphin B to bite that thing and take it off of me, so that we know of. So there are whole schools that have most animals carrying remoras that you can see in certain places. So kind of an interesting relationship that needs more. At least I need to know more about it, but certainly could, maybe some of, again, my colleagues will chime in with some more information, or some of our audience. I just want to end by thanking, from my perspective, this is not a thank you from our team. Just kind of took it as my presentation. So I just wanted to point out a number of very important people to me in my life and career who helped me get to where I am today, and organizations as well. So thanks everybody for attending, and thanks to all of these wonderful people. And certainly not last but not least, my wonderful wife, Nina, who just makes everything possible for me. So I wanted to make sure that I got that out there for everyone to hear, because I just wouldn't be getting things done without her. All right. That's it for me. We have a special, maybe a treat for you if we can arrange it. We've got about 10 or 15 minutes left, I think, in the Zoom. I'm sorry I took so much time away from your questions, but both Tom, Bob, and Uko are, I think, in the audience, and we're going to try and bring them on. So if you have a question, not just for me, we'll share these questions. And if you have one specifically for one of them and their expertise, please make sure you ask them directly, because they'll be on in a moment.
Mark, can you see the poll results?
No, not yet.
In the chat. They're in the chat.
Oh, in the chat. Thank you.
Oh. Actually, yes.
Let me stop sharing.
There were 8 people that scored 100%.
Awesome. You guys are awesome. I'm really impressed. Okay. Well, maybe it was too easy, Bill. No, you guys, I can see who you are. You're all great. You're all folks I know who's been in the field for a long time. So well done, all of you, really. I mean, everybody, thank you for taking the quiz as well, even if you didn't report your score. Very pleased to have you participate.
Well, let's try running through some of these questions. So right away, when you were talking about hybrids, a few people were interested to know more about the hybrids, and specifically, are they fertile? Do they reproduce? Uko provided one reference to a hybrid harbor and Dahl's porpoise that had stranded in the San Juan Islands and was pregnant. I'm wondering if you have any other stories to share, Mark, about what you know about hybrids.
Sure, I'll share a pinniped story. And there's probably also some data from captivity where some mammal species have been allowed to hybridize. But in the southern fur seals of the subantarctic and Antarctic regions, there are numerous hybrids, and they can both reproduce, and they will back cross with their original parents and other hybrids. So it's kind of all, it's kind of a free-for-all down there in some parts of the southern hemisphere. There's really interesting combinations and appearances of hybrids of southern fur seals coming out.
Excellent.
Bob or Uko want to jump in on some of the cetaceans. It's very difficult to know always, though, because we don't always follow these individuals or know they're of large, free-ranging over large areas of mammals like this. It's really sort of hard to know in some cases. There's Uko joining.
There's Uko.
Did Tom and Bob get a chance to come on?
I don't know. Tom and Bob, if you're on, your email should have a link to join. There's Tom, I see.
There you go. Hi, Tom. You're muted, Tom.
Okay, let's go to the next question. Will the third edition include a searchable PDF, online, or downloadable version?
Yes, Tom, go ahead, Tom. You jump in. If you like. Did you have something?
Hi. I think the previous question was about hybrids.
Yes.
And in relation to the blue whale fin whale hybrid flu that Mark showed you photographs of, we know that at least other blue and fin whale hybrids have been fertile. And at least in some cases, they can produce offspring and have second generation hybrid offspring, presumably with one of the parent species. So we don't know if that's the case for flu, who is a male, but we do know that at least in some blue fin whale hybrids, they can be fertile.
Great.
Fascinating. Related to that question, a follow-up question, are hybrid numbers related to population success or increase within population stress in a given area?
That's a good question. I think for the blue fin whale hybrid situation, we don't really know for sure, but there has been speculation, which kind of makes sense, that in particular with blue whale numbers having been reduced to such low numbers because of previous whaling activities, it may have encouraged hybridization, especially with fin whales being much more abundant. So you can imagine a situation where blue whales may have had difficulty finding mates of their own species, and they're pretty closely related to fin whales and have a lot of overlap in distribution. So it may be that, because there was a challenge in finding, appropriate date of your own species, you would be a little bit less selective and, go out and have a date with a fin whale.
And I would just add, with regards to the fur seals, there's been there's kind of a hypothesis that all the hybridization being seen in some parts of the Southern Hemisphere are due to the fact that the species were reduced to very low levels during the 19th and even 18th centuries. And as they've recovered, their pattern of reoccupying islands is not as possibly as stable or consistent as it once was to habitat type. Some fur seals like rocky ledges and steep cliffs, some like boulder beaches, some like cobble. And so those barriers and fur seals of different species are having breeding colonies right adjacent to each other. So you can understand, well, given the opportunity, some things happen. So that is one possible reason for so much hybridization in southern fur seals. And to the question about electronic version, yes, there will absolutely be an electronic version. We're going to give that to our people who have images published, but also you can purchase it. We have it, and it's even available for the second edition now. And it's quite helpful in the field. I use it on my phone all the time when I'm teaching on boats as a naturalist. You can use it on an iPad or on your laptop. And I've never searched it that way. So maybe Tom, you could jump in, I guess, and help me if I think it's searchable, but I've never just used that function.
I think there is a searchable version of the ebook. I think it may be available in two different varieties, a searchable version and a non-searchable version, I think. But I do believe that a searchable option is available, yes.
We'll get back to Susan and Gail with that,
yeah.
With our quiz answer as soon as we get it.
Excellent. And one more comment about the hybrid question. Sue Pemberton mentioned that the Guadalupe fur seal and California sea lion hybrids of the Channel Islands appear to be fertile. Just another comment there.
Thank you, my good friend Sue. She and I talk a lot about fur seals, and I'm really glad you're out there, and thanks for bringing that up. We're working together on some projects, and really glad she's there. So Sue does a great job with Marine Mammal ID in California and wherever she runs into great sightings.
Indeed. Okay, a couple of other questions about other species. Snubfin dolphins. Do you have any sort of updates you can provide about the Australian snubfin dolphin and their status? Are they nearing extinction?
I can say something about that. Yeah, the Australian snub-fin dolphin, as you probably know, is a relatively newly recognized species. It was only described in 2005. So it's only been known for about, what, 17 years. Has a very limited range along the northern coast of Australia and into the island of New Guinea. And it's certainly not a very abundant species, but it does occur in some parts of Australia where there's not very much development, although development does seem to be increasing in much of the range. So at this point, it's not considered to be highly endangered. I believe it's listed as vulnerable on the IUCN list. I'm not sure about that. I'd have to check. But it is certainly a species that there is a lot of concern about because of the limited range, probably relatively small population size. And again, because there is increasing amounts of development in much of the range in Australia, including a lot of oil and gas development in the northern parts of Australia. So it's a species that is of concern. Yeah.
Thank you, John. A similar question about the vaquitas, Mark or Tom. Any sort of update on what their current count is?
Mark, do you want to?
I'll start. Tom, you're very close to all things vaquita, I know. So I was just quite fortunate to have my first chance to see a vaquita. And I consider it very lucky in that because I was out for 3 weeks and we had a small number of sightings on a recent survey. The official estimate from the organizers is 8 to 10 with 1 to 2 calves. That is where we stand based on the recent work late last year.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty amazing. Look at your 2 hands.
Yeah.
Count the number of fingers. Hopefully there's 10, but that's about the number of vaquitas that may be left on the entire planet. That's pretty stunning to think about, actually.
It's very sobering.
Hanging on.
It is.
Hi, Uko. Thanks for coming in.
Going in a different direction, we have a question about killer whales. Bonnie is wondering if you think there's enough evidence to create a separate orca species versus ecotypes.
No, you can jump on that one, Tom. I didn't see Bob come on to help.
Where's Bob here? This is Bob's territory.
He's jumping with us. Bob is one of his many hats is one of killer whale research as well as beaked whales. And having seen, I didn't even have a chance to tell you all that, just by way of bragging, really, because I'm so proud of him. Bob has seen probably more marine mammals than anyone else on the planet. Mm-hmm. I think his latest numbers were 86 cetaceans, and that's of whatever I said, 91. So that's almost unbelievable that he's been able to travel the world so extensively as to see 86 of the species of cetacea.
Look, Bob is on, actually.
Bob is joining, yes.
Hey, Bob.
And name
together,
only.
we've seen about 118 of all the world's marine mammals. Our authorship group.
Wow.
I know.
Bob, are you there?
There he is.
All right.
Yes, I've been here all along, fiddling around with this thing, trying to get it organized. So
there was a killer whale question for you, Bob.
Yeah, that is always the killer whale question. Is there one species or is there 5? And it's still up in the air. That's about where it's going to be for a while. I always tell people if they were warblers, no problem. They're all different species, but because they're intelligent social animals and they can choose not to interbreed, that complicates things immeasurably. So for the time being, we're just going to have to wait and see.
Very good. I've run out of questions here. If anyone has questions for this fantastic group, please jump in the chat or the Q&A.
I think I saw some questions too. There were some questions, I think, about, anyway, we'll get the questions, the information about submitting your photos again. Sorry, I didn't mean to interject. Sorry, Susan. Sorry.
Yeah, well, one of my questions actually might be for you, Uko, because I was kind of fascinated by that new species, or the Omura's whale. Did I get that right?
Yeah, it's not really, and still in a new species necessarily. It was already in our last guide as well. It's just basically just as we're going through these years of since it was the 2015 edition, so we have so many more photos. I mean, there's just about a twofold or threefold of the amount of photos and videos are out there. So as an illustrator, I have so much more to draw, and of course I can tap into Bob and Tom and Mark about what's some of the new things they can see in species. And right now maybe I'll just turn it. I'm working on that's a whole, now when we have a new information on a beaked whale, I'm working on the Andrews beaked whale. So actually you can see a little bit on my screen. I'm working on that right now. Has a whole new patterning information. So all that information we're finding a little bit more. We have better photos. Especially with beaked bills, we're having fresh specimens. If you're dealing with stranded specimens who have really seen post-mortem darkening, but if you see, there's so many more photos out there too. So if you have really fresh specimens, now we can see what the patterning looks like. The Mesoplodon and traverside, it's another species that we finally know what the male looks like that we didn't know in the second edition. So it's in just that short period of time, we have so much more information. So it's insane. We think we know everything about the natural world, and yet there's so many, certainly with the beaked whales, but there are other animals too, we just have more information. So as an illustrator, it's fun. So
sounds like it. And then just while I'm still on board here, the other question maybe for you, Marc Webber, you mentioned the IUCN, which is International Union of Conservation for Nature, I think. And I was just curious if that is, I think you might've mentioned it was European based. But I guess my question is, how does it compare to our Endangered Species Act and legislation, and what is stricter? Because we know how critical the Endangered Species Act is for the United States.
Sure. Well, the Endangered Species Act is a law of the United States, and it is enforced particularly from a marine mammal perspective by the National Marine Fisheries Service of NOAA and the United States Fish and Wildlife Service of Interior. And it is a way for animals to start by being petitioned for listing if they're accepted as endangered or threatened. And we only have two categories in the United States. Then a whole number of things are triggered, such as a recovery plan and team, critical habitat potentially, and so forth. So we have endangered, which is one step before extinct, and threatened, which is one step before endangered. These are legal status elements. The red list, which is what IUCN maintains, IUCN is an NGO, a non-government organization. So its decisions and its statements don't carry the force of law unless a country adopts them as part of their legal management framework. But it is a very widely respected and utilized system for ranking. And they have many more categories ranging from critically endangered. If you hear somebody say critically endangered, that's not a US thing. That's an IUCN thing. They have critically endangered, near threatened, and so forth. So they have many more levels. They also maintain panels of experts who do status reviews, or receive status reviews from scientists, and maintain a website that has species identification or species status information. So if you go to IUCN, look for red list or search for a species, and you'll get a lot of good details.
I did want to just share with folks again, if you're interested in submitting photos for possible inclusion in this publication, you can contact Marc at Marc Webber at sbcglobal.net. And that's Marc with a C, MARCWEBBER at sbcglobal.net. And we put the email address into the chat as well. I know that wasn't a question out there. We also have another question, probably a follow-up for Bob about killer whales. How does one decide how many species or subspecies of killer whales exist? Are DNA samples used?
it's very complicated. Killer whales are different from even a lot of different cetaceans. Again, like I say, because they're social animals and they have cultural transmission from mama generally, they can choose not to interbreed with animals that are very similar genetically and morphologically. So it's gonna take a while to sort this out. There's no consensus right now, and I suspect it'll be a while before we come up with it. Most of the people that I listen to think that there is probably going to be one species of killer whale, but quite different. So, but I don't know. There's no last word on this right now. We're still waiting.
I have a question for you all. Have you thought about including audio samples for different species in a future version? Maybe not this version, but in a future version, especially as you're moving toward making this a digital experience.
I would just say I work with a lot of acousticians in the field, and a lot of these things are readily identifiable based on acoustics. But like dolphins, for instance, they have a very difficult time telling dolphins apart. And it's not like you just, hear a few notes and you can tell what this is. Even people who have extensive recordings have difficulties telling them apart. So I think we're a long way off from being able to identify a lot of these things in the field. On the other hand, for some things, it could tell us that they're there even though we can't see them. So I'm not sure it's something that we are going to be incorporating anywhere in the near future, but it's an interesting possibility at some time.
In the meantime, actually, much of that is available. If you go through Cornell University, they have a lot of files available for a lot of cetaceans, also pinnipeds. The same thing too, there's an enormous archive that dates back from the Cheville and Watkins archive at the New Bedford Whaling Museum, and they have associated websites to go with that. So if you go to any of those websites, you can find an enormous archive on sound archives for those species. So much of that is already somewhat exists. So just to point people there.
A couple of other fun resource sites. I don't, Discovery of Sound in the Sea, DOSITS.
DOSITS, yeah.
DOSITS, it's a good one. And Scripps, if you just did Scripps and re-mammal vocalizations, I think you'd find a new emerging one similar to DOSITS. One of our colleagues who was on the Vaquita survey is a graduate student there and pointed that out to me.
Excellent, great resources, thank you.
All right, I think I'd say this is a wrap. So thank you all so very much.
Fantastic talk.
Yeah, it was just really great. And thanks for all the effort to put this together. And yeah, so maybe when it's launched, we'll have you all back.
Yeah, so, that's good.
Thanks, Mark. Mark is thanking Mark for herding all of us together to put this together. So
yeah, I'm really
herding cats, as they say.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Susan and Gail, for inviting me, and really big thanks to Tom, Bob, and Uko for supporting questions and answers, because I think the whole village concept applies at all levels. We all have our expertise and areas where we work so hard, so yeah, it takes all of us to get this thing to where we want it to be, and all of you to help us to get it there too. Frankly, I want to get that message out there one more time. So thanks to everybody who showed up, and thanks to everybody in advance who may be helping us with photos.
Okay, and
thank
with
you
that,
all.
I will adjourn and hope to see all or many of you for our March talk, which will promises to be very good too. So thanks again. All right,
onward.
Thanks. Good night.
Night.